What will the Dolphins' record look like this season? How will the schedule play out and more? We're getting into all of that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. You're on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Today on the program, we're doing the thing. We're going to look at the Dolphins' schedule. I got it up over at playoffpredictors.com, and we're going to go through the schedule. But before we get into the schedule in and of itself, going to get a little bit into the opponents and kind of break down the tiers and hierarchy as it exists. If you listen to Locked On NFL Scouting, which I do with Joe Marino, who's a Bills fan. And I think it's important to put that disclaimer on that he is a Bills fan because obviously we're forecasting the season. And I'm going to talk about a process that we do that talks about quantifying players and grading players and putting them into buckets to put a numerical value for how much they're worth. Right? That process has a nice checks and balances for me as a Dolphins fan, acknowledging my own inherent bias because Joe is a Bills fan. So the two of us Locked On NFL Scouting, we watch the tape on all the teams throughout the course of the summer. For 8 weeks, it's a team a day. You watch and grade and put them into buckets like franchise cornerstones, quality starters, sufficient level starters, quality depth, replacement level starters, rookies, incomplete evaluations, like the whole thing, the whole roster. And the Dolphins grade probably better than the Vegas win totals and FanDuel win totals would have you expect. The Dolphins in this exercise ranked in the NFL between the coaching staff and the roster 14th in the NFL. That's right on a bubble, right? If the top 14 teams are 7 AFC, 7 NFC, you're talking about a bubble playoff team in 2025. And this exercise that we do is not meant to definitively say this is the order that these are going to finish with. It's how much do you have to work with going into the season? So the Dolphins, I think, have a competitive amount of resources between coaches, whether that's Mike McDaniel's play calling amidst some of his warts as a head coach and game management questions and challenges, whether that's Anthony Weaver, whether that's the personnel with the front seven, the offensive line, the explosive speed with the skill players, the starting court, whatever you want to look at from a people in the football team standpoint. Dolphins ranked 14th out of 32 teams. The question is, how many of the teams that the Dolphins play are definitively in the tier above them? How many of the teams that the Dolphins play are in relatively the same tier as they are? And then how many teams do the Dolphins play that are definitively tier or tiers below them? Right? And a quick jaunt through the schedule. They're at Indy, home opener against the Patriots, short week Thursday against the Bills, Monday night with extra rest against the Jets. That is the Deep Waters Nike Rivalries uniform. At Carolina, home against the Chargers, West Coast team coming east. In Cleveland against the Browns. In Atlanta against the Falcons. Short week at home against the Ravens, which is a wagon. Home against the Bills with the extra rest from playing on Thursday. International game against Washington. Bye, week 12, out of the bye. You're home against the Saints. You're in New York against the Jets. You're in Pittsburgh against the Steelers on Monday Night Football. You're home against the Bengals. You're home against the Bucks, and then you finish in New England against the Patriots. That's Dolphins' opponents. And what I can tell you is this. The Dolphins have 3 games this season against teams that rank in the exercise that I just described that Joe and I did, 3 games against teams that rank in the top 8 in the NFL, like the upper quadrant, to quote the late Jim Irsay, right? With the upper quartile of the upper quartile, the upper quartile of the league. The Dolphins play 3 games, Baltimore and the 2 against the Bills. It gets interesting with the teams that rank within the same overall tier. The max value that a team can collect in this exercise is about 60 points. The Dolphins check in at about a 29.5. They have 4 opponents that are within a 1.5 of the Dolphins score, but all of them rank above Miami. It's Tampa Bay, the Chargers, the Steelers, and the Commanders. The Bengals rank in the same 1.5 band, but on the other side because of the questions on their defense this year. So that closely collected group out of a 60-point max, within 3 points, you've got about a third of the Dolphins' schedule into that bucket. Those are the games that you would naturally, I think, point at and say, those could break in your favor or out of your favor. More often than not, that would be the ones that decide what kind of season you have, because law of averages, you play the teams that are ranked overwhelmingly better in what they have at their disposal from a resources perspective. They're probably going to win more often than not. Teams that you rank several tiers in front of, and there's teams that the Dolphins rank 13, 10, 8 points better than on this 60-point scale. I mean, those are teams like Cleveland, the Saints. The Falcons do not score well in this exercise. The Patriots are going to be an upstart team under Mike Vrabel, but their roster still, and Mike Vrabel kind of said this morning on local radio. He's asked about trading for Micah Parsons. Michael has got me on my Jerry Jones vibe. And Mike Vrabel was like, we need to build through the draft. We haven't drafted well. We don't have a very sturdy foundation of young talent on this roster. It was not the right opportunity for us because of what the cost would have been and the needs of our roster. They're building. They're going to be a problem into the future. I feel pretty confident in saying that, but where are they at right now? Right. So you have games on either extreme, but I think it's those Bucks, Chargers, Steelers, Commanders, Bengals games that I think are going to be going a long way in determining what kind of season the Dolphins ultimately end up having. Challenges with the schedule itself, as far as when you're catching certain teams, where the challenging blocks are. And we kind of did some of this when the schedule originally dropped, but we got a better idea of what these football teams look like and what the Dolphins actually have. So we'll get into that next, and then we'll close with the actual record prediction going game by game, talking about how I see this season shaking out for Miami. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins, so make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner. You can feel the buzz, that last-minute cramming for that last-minute league. Everybody's researching and drafting. If you haven't joined the league, you're running out of time. Now is the time. I'm playing on Yahoo Fantasy, as I do every year, and you should too, whether you're a newbie or you're creating your millionth league. Yahoo is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features that make the game even better. The season kickoff is on September 4th, so now's the time to start playing. If you want more ways to play, try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team each week is eliminated until there's just one team left standing. If you prefer the classics, you can get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. Or if you don't have a group of friends, you can join a public league, which is the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off on September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. I will say this. The Dolphins getting 2 road trips out of the way in the first 11 days of the season. You're fortunate that that's not 2 back-to-back. You're fortunate that you kind of have your own process for however they want this week's travel to go with going to Indianapolis. They will have the opportunity to do so and not really be stressed with the travel. But then you've got the short week in Buffalo, and it's a house of horrors whenever you get the short week in Buffalo opportunities. I know everybody has the acid reflux from thinking about last year's game, and then the 22 game on a Saturday in which you had an opportunity midway through the fourth quarter to maybe close it out, make it a 2-score game and possess the ball and milk the clock. And you gave the ball back and gave up a game tying score. And then you can't do anything with it. And then they control the final 6 minutes of possession and go down and kick a game winning field goal in the snow. Right? It's been not a very fun experience in Buffalo on short weeks as of late. But then again, it also hasn't been a very fun experience anytime they've played Buffalo. And I will give you a sleeper. I'm not going to pick that to change until they show they can do it. But that is the first, as you look at the schedule, the first block of challenges. I feel fortunate that when you look at kind of the late September, October stretch through the Thursday, up until the Thursday game in week 9 against Baltimore at home, you got 3 out of 4 on the road in that period as well. But those are teams that I think the Dolphins could do pretty well with, as far as Carolina. And you've got a rookie in Teteroa McMillan's kind of the featured player in the passing game. Adam Thielen cut you up the last time you played Carolina, and he's gone. They spent a lot of money in free agency, but it's still week 5 on the defensive side of the ball. So you got a lot of new trying to come together for a lot of new players. Then you get the Chargers game at home, where that's a West Coast team that's got to fly all the way over and play at your place at 1 o'clock. Which, if you're going to draw a 1 o'clock team that's rated better than you are, that would probably be the kind of draw that you would want. Then you're at Cleveland, and Cleveland has very low expectations this year as a team. And then you have Atlanta, and Atlanta's a tough one to peg, but Atlanta, their biggest issues are their pass rush, and they have a first-year starter full-time at Michael Penix, who lost his blindside tackle for the year, and Caleb McGarry, who's already gone down. Now, how you defend the combination of Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson is part of the conversation when we get to game week that week. We're going to have to make sure that the secondary has come together a little bit and playing with a little bit more, a little bit of chemistry, because that can be a challenge, especially when you've got a back that can go with it as well. But Drew Dahlman left in free agency, and now they're down Caleb McGarry for the year. So that block, I think it's a merciful draw that you have 2 out of 3 on the road to start, but then you get that next block of games where, yeah, you're on the road a lot, but I like the matchups for Miami quite a bit. And then you've got, obviously, everybody's circled the week 9 through 11 block, it's a tough block. You're home, but it's a short week against Baltimore. And then you're home with extra rest, but it's against Buffalo. Those 2 games are against teams that rank in this Locked On NFL scouting exercise as top 4 teams in the NFL. You've got advantages with both of those games for short week and then extra rest, but you got the worst draw for teams. And then you got to go international week 11 before your bye, and you get a late bye this year, and play Washington. I think Washington is a little bit of a regression candidate from where they were last year as a 12-5 football team. I think they'll kind of view them how I view Pittsburgh, and those 2 teams score very similarly as far as they should be in playoff contention and should have winning records this year. But I don't see Washington winning 12 games and being in the NFC Championship game last year and say, oh, they're going to do the thing Detroit did the year before, where then they won 15 games and were an absolute juggernaut. I don't look at the veterans that they brought in. I don't look at how they ran back the whole thing with Dan Quinn with a bunch of veteran players on defense and necessarily feel like that is an open and shut 13, 14 win team. But it's international, and that's the ultimate equalizer for anything that a team has from an advantage or disadvantage, and it's going to test you. So that block of 3 games, weeks 9 through 11, and then I think the travel element of the first 3 weeks is where you'll get tested, and then you come out of the bye, and it's another 3-game block with Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Tampa Bay, and those are 3 of the games that are in that block of, or three games against teams that are in that block that's in the same 3-point tier on that 60-point scale. Pittsburgh ranks as a 30.4. Tampa ranks as a 30.75. Cincinnati ranks as a 28.5. Miami ranked as a 29.5. So that's a very tightly knit group. You get two of those at home. One of them's technically on a short week with you playing on Monday night to play Pittsburgh the first one. If you could steal one of the early ones in there, and it could probably set you up for having a little bit of buffer for down the stretch, depending on how you handle business in the early portions of the season. Now, we're going to make game by game and record prediction. But before we do, I do want to make the disclaimer. I've kind of decided I'm going to grade the season and pick the games based off of what we have in front of us right now. What do the Dolphins have at their disposal? There's high variance and higher variance than most teams in the NFL from an availability standpoint for what the Dolphins roster could look like versus what it looks like right now. And I would also say I'm picking the schedule with 17 games of Tua Tagovailoa, and that is happened once in 5 years. It happened in 23, so it's capable of happening. If it doesn't happen, every 4 games the Dolphins play without Tua, I would pick them to lose 3 out of 4 because that's been the math under Mike McDaniel when Tua has played versus when Tua has not. I will pick them to lose 3 out of 4. So if he misses 3 out of 4, but it comes with at Atlanta, home against Baltimore, home against Buffalo, international against Washington, I might have picked them to lose 3 out of 4 in that stretch to begin with. I haven't decided about that last game yet. I might have. So that's where, depending on when it happens, I could still see if you went through that adversity, reaching a win total that I'm going to project here. But if it happens and he misses home against Jets, at Carolina, home against Chargers, at Cleveland, I think you're going to take more losses than what the forecast says here. And that's assuming he were only to miss 4 games. Maybe he misses less, and then it's less impactful, and maybe it doesn't change your record prediction. Maybe he misses more, in which case that would be when I would start to entertain where kind of the general national consensus is on this team. I don't buy this team, worst team in football, Mike McDaniel's fired by Halloween. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I don't see it with the schedule. I don't see it with them having all hands on deck with the exception of Kader Kohu, really. I know they have some limitations. I don't know how well equipped the Colts and the Patriots and the Jets in the first and the Panthers in 4 of the first 5 games. I don't know how well equipped those teams are going to end up being to take advantage of some of the flaws that Miami's early season may have until they figure out who they really want playing in the secondary and get those guys used to playing with each other. We're going to do the schedule prediction next here. Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. NFL season is just about here. FanDuel's making sure you have a kickoff that has a can't miss offer in the bag. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app however you'd like. I love using FanDuel because no matter how you choose to play, they've got what you need to make sure that you have skin in every game that you sit down to watch. It's quick. It's easy. It's the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays watching your favorite teams play. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now. Visit FanDuel.com. Get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Still paying a full price for the tank gas? Stop leaving money on the table. Get real cash every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use our limited time promo code touchdown and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 per year just by buying the gas that you already need. At first, I think it's too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon or other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now. Use the limited time promo code touchdown for a limited 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code touchdown. Offers may vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. So we are now going to do the thing. I gave my disclaimer. I talked about the Tua element to picking games. We talked about the strengths and weaknesses and pitfalls of the schedule. We talked about what teams in the Locked On NFL scouting exercise are ranked above or below Miami. There's only one thing left to do. We're going to pick all the games. And this is based off of about 3 o'clock on Tuesday, September 2nd. The Dolphins will start in Indianapolis. Tough thing about this game, you've got the Jim Irsay going into the Ring of Honor. He obviously passed away this summer, so there's going to be a lot of emotion in that building. But I do look at some new players and pieces on the offensive line for the Colts. Daniel Jones at quarterback. They have their own secondary concerns and a new defensive scheme going in. That's enough for me relative to the continuity of Miami and having all hands on deck. I'm picking the Dolphins to win week 1 against the Colts. We'll talk a little bit more about that game between the crossover Thursday on Thursday and then the game preview show on Friday. Now, home opener against the Patriots, kind of the same thing, right? Where you have Drake May now learning a new offensive system with Josh McDaniels coming in and running an Erhard Perkins system with all new wide receivers, and they're rebuilding this roster and foundationally feel like they have some pieces. Travion Henderson's really exciting. The defense will be better, but the Dolphins are at home. Give me the Dolphins. Week 2. I think the Dolphins start 2-0. Now, I've already spoiled the Bills games. I'm not picking the Dolphins to beat the Bills until they show they can do otherwise. And I've said that before in years past, and then I've got to the week of the game, and I said, you know what? I think they're going to do it. It's going to happen. Just for your sanity and mine, surprise me, Miami. Surprise me and go to Buffalo on a Thursday and beat Josh Allen and the Bills. Surprise me. I'd love nothing more. I believe you can, but you got to play your best football, and you got to have guys like Jordan Poyer not knocking out Keon Coleman in a tie game. I need guys like Deshaun Hand. When that ball's in the air, you got to make the play. I mean, both of those plays were in the final 2 minutes. You give the Dolphins offense all the credit in the world for what they did in the second game against Buffalo last year. Dolphins offense, Tua Tagovailoa, two touchdown drives to tie the game in the fourth quarter, including one that was a clutch drive. Efficient. You'll be able to run the ball against this football team, man, because they want to play light boxes against you, and they want to force you into what you don't want to do. And if you can get downhill, watch anytime Baltimore plays the Bills. And I know the Bills beat the Ravens in the playoffs last year. Watch the first matchup in the regular season, right? They ran over them because they could run with some teeth. I think you've made some adjustments to try to do that. That would go a long way in, I think, giving you what you need for some of those situational moments when you do play them close to close the deal and get a win. Monday night, home with extra rest against the Jets, Aaron Glenn with Justin Fields. This is where I think the Dolphins' speed on the second level and its safety is going to come in big in games like this, because this team's going to run the ball. The Dolphins have really invested in the defensive line. They've got everybody all hands on deck right now. The Jets are going to have a really good offensive line for a really long time. But right now, it's a player in Garrett Wilson that I think you can roll coverage to. Justin Fields, the Dolphins, I think, have the second level speed to kind of match backs and tight ends in coverage. And then also a guy like Justin Fields that they have not had across the board in quite some time. I think that'll play to their advantage. You can give me the Dolphins to win this game as well. So starting 3-1. And you go to Carolina, play the Panthers. Same thing, some same elements as far as the offensive line for Carolina, which is going to be good. They don't have the Garrett Wilson type threat in the passing game. I think they're a team that if you can get after them on third down, because Dave Canales is really going to be content to just kind of mush the ball up there and try to create third and neutrals and third and mediums. And then if you can really create knockback and run you off the ball, they can really put you in a bind, and that's where they could stress you. I think you're catching them early with all the new pieces on defense. And I don't see a lot of matchups offensively that are going to really scare you from a coverage perspective. And I think if you get in 3rd and 6s with consistency, I think you have the horses to go get Bryce Young and bring him down. So you can give me the Dolphins in a win in week 5. I think they start 4-1. This is that first kind of bubble game, right? I will pick the Chargers to come over, and it's really because they have the supercharged element of power running at their disposal, where like the Jets, it's young. And the Panthers, I just think you're maybe a different tier down. Now, Rashawn Slater's out for the year. So that's a piece for Miami that I think leans in their favor pretty significantly for this matchup. I think the Chargers with Jesse Minter and what they have at corner, they don't have a bunch of star name power at corner, but they've got a guy in Derwin James who can create a lot of conflict for you. I think they will kind of by structure test Miami, try to load the box. I think Coach Harbaugh and his management of games is probably an advantage in this game as well. So I probably less on personnel, where I think the Dolphins have some good matchups. This is a very winnable game. But I'll pick the Chargers for the coaching matchups, which would put the Dolphins at 4-2. Then I'm going to pick them to win the next 2. Cleveland, let's just say Cleveland, low expectations this year. But I do like their matchups against Atlanta, where the Falcons, they really haven't had a pass rush of any level of consistency for quite some time. And the Dolphins already leaning into getting the ball out of their hands fast. They got a lot of youth on the defensive side of the ball. They don't have any proven talent on the defensive interior. They moved on from Grady Jarrett. And then I really think losing Caleb McGarry already is going to be a tough matchup for Atlanta to block all of Miami's pass rushers with Michael Penix as a young quarterback. So that gives the Dolphins a 6-2 record through week 8. And that brings us to the first of the 2 kind of challenging blocks for Miami. I can in good faith pick them to pick the Bills, and I will not pick them to defeat the Ravens. I think the Ravens are going to be an absolute wagon this year, which would drop Miami from 6-2 to 6-4. 2 home losses in 10 days is a rough draw. If you can pull one of those, man, the outlook for the season would change dramatically. But I think this is a team that, and you can look at how they responded and how they fought last year and how I think Washington's a little bit of a regression candidate. You could give me the win here against the Commanders. I think the Dolphins will beat the Commanders. That would give them a 7-4 record coming home out of the bye. I think they will get 1 out of those 3 in that tough stretch. If you can get 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3 in that stretch, man, the conversations we're going to be having in the Week 12 bye are going to get a little nutty. But I think they will take care of the business that you perceive they're supposed to. I think they will log a win in the first 11 weeks against a quality opponent, whether that's the Chargers, I think is a winnable game, whether that's stealing one against the Bills. I'd be surprised if it's the Ravens, but it's Thursday at home, so you never know, or against Washington. I think they'll get 1. And again, in 23, they got the Dallas game, right? And they showcased that against an uncommon opponent, they could get that win that was a quality win. And it ended up being really pivotal for them to make the playoffs, and unfortunately was not enough for them to avoid going to Kansas City and playing minus 20-degree weather. So 7-4 coming out of the bye. The Saints are a team that very much like Cleveland, and you get them at home out of the bye. I'm picking the Dolphins to win that game, which puts the Dolphins at 8-4. You have Jets and Steelers on the road. You have Bengals, Bucks at home, and then at New England. I think the Jets are probably still a year away. I'll pick the Dolphins to take both games against the Jets this year. And obviously the Jets played you tough last year. But Aaron Glenn, new regime, some new pieces, Saleh, that defense going through some changes. They still have some really good pieces, concerned about their run defense, and they have smaller linebackers. So you can give me the game against the Jets. Monday night on the road, cold weather game, prime time against an AFC North opponent in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, that's not pretty. that's a lot of narratives in one game. If the Dolphins win that one, you give them a lot of flowers. And I think that, again, we talked about the Steelers being in that same bucket as the Chargers and the Commanders, and the Bengals and Bucks, I think, are in that same tier too. I think that is a game that the Dolphins could win, depending on Steelers. What do they have at wide receiver? And do you have somebody can match with DK Metcalf with his size and physicality? Can Pittsburgh? I mean, their offensive lines had some health stuff between Fautanu and Broderick Jones, Isaac Siamalu. So that'll be an interesting storyline as well. And this is the kind of the time of year where how much do you have your, what's the Bum Phillips quotes? Hisins and yoursins versus theirs and theirins. Who has more left? I'll pick the Steelers to win the game, however. I think the thing I feel the most confident about in the game against the Bengals, which I believe this is what the Sunday night game. Yeah, but it's at home. This one kind of feels like Dallas to me. With the exception of the one thing I feel confident about this game, and this is going to be some points between Cincinnati's defense, which I have about Miami's defense. I think Miami's a more well-rounded team, and that's reflected in the Locked On NFL scouting element. And Zach Taylor, I think I got respect for Cincinnati, but Zach Taylor individually, when you're talking about coaching matchups where Cincinnati or the Chargers were another team that I kind of felt this way about, I think Zach more often than not, it's just a matter of, hey, let your elite quarterback go out there and work his chemistry with his guys. But Miami at home, you can give me the Miami Dolphins to win that game. Now, I will pick them to lose against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which will put the Dolphins at 10-6 going into Week 18. Is this a clinch to playoff spot? Are you contending for playoffs? Feels a little, it's on the higher end of the bands. I know that. You can use your own discretion on whether the Dolphins win this game, whether they need to win this game. I think if they needed to win this game, I'd be inclined to pick them to win this game, but it is also later in the year where Drake May's now settled in with a full season of time on task. Maybe you don't need the game based off playoff situation. I don't think 10 or 11 wins would be enough to win you the division. I think you need 13 to chase down Buffalo this year. I think they're going to be that good. So you're looking at a wild card berth potentially. Give me 10 wins. Give me 10-7 for the Dolphins this year. And I know that's in the middle ground. I watched some folks do schedule predictions and they had 11 and 12. I watched some of the newspaper guys, and they're picking 7 and 10, 8 and 9. Put me in the middle of it. You could call me Switzerland if you want. One thing I know for certain, I would pick the Dolphins if you told me they had the right players healthy throughout the year to comfortably go over the projected win total and to be a wild card berth team this year. I think they have, with the pass rush, the interior spine of the defense, the upgrades to give you a broader menu for what you could do offensively, Tua Tagovailoa's health. And again, that's the variable here. I have 10 wins through the first 17 weeks for Miami. And if Tua missed 4 games, it could be 7, right? And that's dependent upon where the injury, a injury would happen in this stretch. And you have to plan for the injuries, unfortunately, because that's the world that we're prompted to live in because of the realities of what Tua's seasons have been like in Miami. And I hope we get 17 at Tua. And if we have to see Zach Wilson, I hope Zach plays lights out. Exceeds expectation. But you put me down for 10 wins for the Dolphins this year. That's going to do it for us here at Locked On Dolphins. Your team every day. Appreciate you guys for checking out the show. Come on back. See you again tomorrow.